Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
And today we're going to be talking about Daredevil. Released in 2003, starring Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, Colin Farrell, and Michael Clarke Duncan. And Jon Favreau. Written and directed by Mark Steven Johnson. This was a year after Spider-Man and Blade 2. And X-Men 1, obviously.
3 years after X-Men.
Right. It was a year after Spider-Man, but yeah, it was in the beginning of the superhero boom. And I'm actually surprised, thinking back on it, I'm actually kind of surprised Daredevil comes at the beginning of the boom, because he doesn't seem like as big of a Marvel character as some... I mean, he's a pretty big character, but not as big as some of the other Marvel characters. Like Spider-Man, and you think of Captain America and stuff like that. So it's interesting that he was one of the first superhero movies to kind of come out in the early 2000s. Obviously, it did not do as well as Spider-Man. But
I don't think it doesn't surprise me really thinking about it, because this was Marvel's answer to Batman, save Iron Man,
Right.
And Iron Man clearly was not the one they were going to go with at the time.
Right.
Because no one knew who Iron Man was in the general public. And, most people didn't know who Daredevil was either. Right. But Daredevil looks more like Batman. He looks more like a superhero. There's
some definite Batman influences in this movie, too, I think. A couple of times, yeah.
You have the gothic style of the city.
Right. Hanging out on rooftops and stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
And even in the director's cut, which is what John and I watched, there's like one scene where Daredevil lifts his head and you see the silhouette or the shadow of him,
right? The
outline of the horns and everything, which is so when I saw that, I thought clearly that was a Batman shot, and he was like, "Well, we're doing it with Daredevil instead."
Yeah. The whole reason that this movie really even got made also was I think because of Frank Miller having done history with the character,
right?
That's apparently why Ben Affleck took the role.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah,
was because he wanted, he's a big fan of Batman, and he liked Frank Miller, The Dark Knight Returns, and Daredevil. Frank Miller's Daredevil, and he was approached with the role, and he's like, "Well, I'm never going to get to play Batman, so this is the next best thing." Right. Frank Miller did Batman, he did Daredevil. I liked him, so let's just do this.
Yeah, and speaking of that, that's part of the reason why we're doing this movie this week, because just the other day, Netflix released season 2 of Daredevil, but also because this is Ben Affleck's first foray into superhero crime fighting, and next week we have Batman v Superman come out. So I thought it was a good, we thought it was a good movie to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really shocked me was when they first show Matt Murdock, and I'm like, wow, he looks really young.
Yeah.
So
it was 13 years ago.
Yeah. We've had 13 years. Ben Affleck has had a lot of maturing happen in his acting, and it'll be interesting to compare, especially with characters that can be very similar.
Right.
To see what changes he makes, and just looking at not to go off topic here with Batman v Superman, but looking at the trailer footage and clips that we've gotten of Ben Affleck, I think he's going to nail this Bruce Wayne, and I think the acting skill has gone up tremendously since he was Matt Murdock.
Yeah, and I think somewhere in the mid 2000s or something, maybe even the late 2000s, Ben Affleck kind of I hate to say started taking things seriously, because I don't want to ever say that he didn't take things seriously. But when you watch some of his performance in these early 2000 movies, not this movie necessarily in particular, even though there is one moment in particular in this movie where I feel like he was not taking it seriously. But like other movies, because I think like Geely came out around this time, and it was like all the flops he kind of had.
Sure.
And people started kind of looking at him as, I wouldn't say it's a joke, but like just weren't taking him as serious as an actor as he obviously can be.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's nice to see now, that he, like you said, maybe has matured as an actor, and I think he's going to kill it as both Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
The moment in this movie that always bugs me every single time is during the playground fight, which is a ridiculous scene anyway. But it's like right at the beginning, he takes off his jacket, and then he, catches his walking stick thing. And then I think it cuts to Jennifer Garner, and then it cuts back to him, and he's got this ridiculous smirk on his face. Like, to me, it just looks like he's about to bust out laughing, and that was like the best take they could get out of him.
I was going to say, he might have been about to burst out laughing.
Like, I hate, every time I see that face he's making, I'm like, come on, man. Like, at least pretend like you would, can take this movie seriously. Right. That being said, I actually enjoyed this movie when it came out in 2003. That's probably one of the only ones. It's hard to watch now, I think. But I would say the director's cut is actually an improvement over the theatrical version.
Really?
There's a couple of reasons for that, and we can get into it. But
you'll see, this was the second time I have seen this movie.
Right.
I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
And I vowed never to watch it. No, not really. I just didn't, so that goes to say something too.
I didn't read Daredevil comics as a kid, but when they announced that they were making a Daredevil movie, I think I knew who Daredevil was, probably from the Spider-Man cartoon. But I went out and got Daredevil comics and started reading up on the character, and I actually really came to like the character a lot. And so I was really excited for the movie when the movie came out, and I enjoyed it enough. But I think I was just excited about superhero movies, any superhero movie at that point.
Yeah. Oh, they were still so fresh,
right,
when this movie came out.
And so I liked it. I think I saw this movie 3 times in the theater. Mm-hmm. It was not nearly as good as Spider-Man. I knew it had weaknesses and things like that, but I still liked it, and I thought he was decent as Daredevil.
Like I said, I was joking about vowing that I'd never watch it again.
Right.
But that's kind of how I felt anyway, because I did not like the movie.
Sure.
When I first saw it.
And totally understandable.
Yeah. I knew who Daredevil was.
Yeah.
I had lots of trading cards.
Right.
When I was in elementary school, and had lots. Daredevil showed up frequently. I even am pretty sure that I had a Daredevil action figure.
That's pretty cool.
I might have even had the yellow costume one.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so I knew who Daredevil was. Knew he was blind. Because that's something that if you don't read the comics or anything,
right, you wouldn't.
You might not know that.
Right.
But that's really all I knew. And I still don't know that much about him. But
I mean, I don't even know if I knew he was blind before I started reading the comics. I think I knew who the character was, but and maybe I did, and if I did, I think it would all be because of that Spider-Man cartoon where he had a few episodes. But yeah, I like the whole idea of blind lawyer by day and vigilante crime fighter by night type thing. I thought that was kind of cool.
I don't even remember seeing him in the Spider-Man cartoons.
I know that there was a couple episodes where they had Daredevil showed up, because the only reason I know for sure is because there's a DVD you can buy it's strictly just those couple of episodes of Daredevil and Spider-Man, or Spider-Man with Daredevil on it.
Gotcha.
What do you think about Daredevil's costume in this movie?
I like it.
Yeah, I kind of like it too. It's have you watched the Netflix Daredevil yet?
I'm ashamed to say I have not.
That's okay.
So I'm not going to be able to, do comparisons with that either.
Right. I like there's one major gripe I have about the Netflix costume, and that's basically that I feel like they're trying to make the mask, even more like Batman because it comes down over his nose, kind of like Batman's cowl a little bit. And that's not how Daredevil's ever been drawn. He's always had his nose exposed, kind of like how it is in the Ben Affleck movie. And I know that's like a nitpicky gripe, but it just, when I first saw it, I was like, that's not Daredevil. It just didn't look like Daredevil to me.
Yeah.
But
it's not that nitpicky. I mean, they need to look like, unless they're going for, like a new look.
Right.
Tim Burton's Batman, 89 Batman, stuff like that. But you typically want your character on screen to look recognizable.
Right.
And very, I like him to look as close to the comic book as possible.
Right, I do too. And so I do, I like the costume in the Netflix series, but I also like this one. I like it. There's a couple of things. It's like a motorcycle suit almost in this movie, which is fine. It's kind of leather made, or leather look like it's made of leather. That's what I was trying to say.
This one was very leathery too.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. This one.
Oh, okay.
The Ben Affleck one.
Yeah.
And then he has that like strap that goes across his neck, and I wish that he had kept it hooked the whole movie because I think it looks so good when it's hooked when he's got like the neck strap hooked and with the mask on and everything. But half the time he's fighting with it undone, and it just looks like he's kind of got this weird open collar thing. But yeah, and I actually I dig it. I think it's okay. I like the color of it. I actually think this color is a little better than the Netflix Daredevil. The Netflix Daredevil almost goes into a little bit of a purplish color. It's almost like too dark.
Yeah.
But I guess, you're fighting at night. You want to maybe blend in with the shadows.
Right. And not to bring up Batman again, but that's kind of one of the best arguments that you have for the movie, a costume that Batman has always had.
Yeah, being all black.
That you can't see him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, I would like Daredevil, especially his name's Daredevil, to have, that cliche red aspect about him.
Right.
He's got the horns.
He does have the horns.
He needs a pitchfork.
And a tail. No.
Yeah. Instead of a grappling hook, he could have a tail. No, I'm kidding. For anyone out there that doesn't know, I'm kidding.
As much as I read Daredevil comics and whatnot, I don't think back then, at least 13 years ago when I was reading the line of comics, I don't know how much Elektra really showed up. So I don't know very much about Elektra. But I know that her costume is nothing like the costume in the movie. But
right, I don't know anything about Elektra either, but I do remember what she looked like.
Yeah.
It was almost, she had like red... She was red as well.
It was, yeah. And it was kind of a skimpy outfit, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I feel like she had like a red bandana and it was like long and flowy.
Exactly.
And some other stuff.
Like red gloves. I think she had like some red, like knee-high
boots and stuff.
Probably heel boots, yeah.
And I did read a little, an interview somewhere about how, I guess they asked Jennifer Garner about that, and she was like, I'm doing all this wire work for all these stunts, and I couldn't. That costume was pretty much impractical. She's like, it hurts enough going through these leather outfits. She's like, I can't imagine being in something that's like red spandex practically or something. So I kind of understand why they do kind of do a little homage to it on that rooftop scene. What she's wearing in that scene looks kind of very Elektra-ish, I think.
Right.
So at least you get that a little bit. Michael Clarke Duncan, though, as Kingpin, I like him a lot. He's over the top a little bit. He's not as good as Vincent D'Onofrio on the Netflix show, but he was a good choice back in the day, I think.
Okay. Yeah, watching him this time, I was pretty okay with him. I wasn't like, blown away or anything. But,
sure.
He didn't have that much screen time either.
Right.
But it's interesting that Kingpin is also
a Spider-Man villain, right?
Kilowog.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. What did you bring up Spider-Man for?
I thought, Kingpin is also a Spider-Man villain. Right. I thought that's what you were saying. I thought you were bringing that up. Let's talk about the final of the main cast members. Colin Farrell as Bullseye. Bullseye's costume is obviously very different as well from the comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember Bullseye's costume. He was kind of a very eye-catchy costume. Spandex all the way around. He had that hood which had like the black and white bullseye
on the forehead,
which they homaged to with the scar.
With the scar, right.
But I don't like that.
Right. I don't like the trench coat look either on him.
Yeah.
And honestly, it never bothered me before, but watching it this time, I'm not a fan of his performance as Bullseye. It's
I agree.
so over the top, and he's chewing so much
goofy.
scenery. It is goofy.
It's not almost goofy. It is goofy.
It is goofy, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's hard to watch. He's hard to take serious as like a serious villain. And I realize that his power is kind of... I mean, I think you could make Bullseye cool. His power is a little ridiculous where he's like got perfect aim all the time. But, I mean, if you can have characters like... I guess he can also... His other power is that he can pretty much make anything a deadly weapon. Right? Because he can throw it and just hit you wherever.
He threw a playing card, unless it was some kind of special thing that he had made. But yeah, he threw a playing card. And
he threw a paperclip into a guy's throat and killed him with a paperclip.
Yeah.
So
I actually like that. Like in a comic book world, that makes you accept that. And
exactly,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So to bring that to movie, it was a little bit hard to kind of take, but I kind of had to remind myself, well, this is comic book, and they've gotten so good at translating that lately, to where stuff's believable, and they hadn't really gotten to that point when this movie was made. So I like his power. I think that's cool, but you go with Daredevil, like this, or at least the way they portrayed him in this movie. And like I said, I haven't seen the Netflix version yet, so I don't know how far they take this. But they give him pretty much supernatural abilities.
Yeah, it's a little over the top.
He's like Jedi leaping,
right?
And a couple other things that
That's another big problem I have with this movie is that he gets these super senses, which I'm totally fine with, and even the whole my sense of touch gave me incredible balance or whatever. And you see him doing the handstand on the roof. Like, even that, I'm like, okay, I can kind of go with it. But when you see him, like, jump off the top of a, 100-story building or whatever, and he's falling a really long way and then lands on the window washing whatever, you're like, he would be dead. He doesn't have, like, super bones.
Yeah, and he also jumps, like, 30 feet.
Yeah.
Like to other buildings. And then there was one part in the church fight with Bullseye where he, like, jumps an entire story, if not more, up a level.
As far as I know, Daredevil does not have, that's not possible for him. He's pretty much, aside from, having the super senses and, like, even the radar sense, he's basically just a regular guy.
He's human.
Yeah, he doesn't have any super strength or anything like that, so he can get hurt, which the movie tries to allude to by having all the scars on his back and everything. But I will say the Netflix show does a lot better job of that.
Okay.
But every time you see him, like, running and jumping from one building to another, and he's practically flying to it, you're just I'm always kind of like,
Well, and that's one thing that I wrote down in my notes was early on was first of all, this was done by Fox.
Yeah, 20th
so
Century Fox.
we got the same studio that gave us X-Men,
right,
and Fantastic Four, which came out after.
Fantastic Four came out. The first Fantastic Four came out in 2004
or 5.
I want to say 5, but I might be wrong.
I think you're right. Anyway, Spider-Man had come out at this point, and
I did hear that originally this movie had a budget of $78 million, according to Box Office Mojo, and I did hear that it had an original budget of $50 million, and then when they saw how well Spider-Man did, they gave them more money, and they were like, oh, and they gave him like an extra $25 million or something.
Interesting. Whoops.
They probably regretted that.
But also, this came out around the time that movies were still kind of copying The Matrix.
Yeah. That's true.
And you see a lot of Matrix wannabe in this movie.
Yeah. From costume to effects, you're right. It's very Matrix influenced.
Even the music, you kind of have the techno music.
This is some of the worst music. It's got, there's like Nickelback playing during that one fight scene, and it's just not good music.
I didn't pick up on that.
Well,
it's probably because my ears were bleeding.
That's right. It's during that when it's probably the first time he goes out as Daredevil. After he loses that court case and he goes to see Jose Quesada, and he's just like beating up like all those biker guys and everything. Underneath that scene, Nickelback is playing.
I gotcha. I want to give kudos to Ben Affleck for one thing.
What's that?
His ability to be a believable blind person.
Yeah, I think he does a pretty good job of that as well.
There's a scene where he's dancing with Elektra. I think it might have been I can't remember if it was the first or second time they met, but
is it at the party?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it the first time?
No. They met. Well, technically, they meet in the coffee shop.
Oh, yeah, the party. Right.
Fight. So
of course. So yeah, this would have been the second time. And she takes off his glasses. Isn't that when? No, she knows he's blind.
She does take off his glass. She knows he's blind, but she takes off his glasses so she can look at her eyes. And he says something like, "It makes most people uncomfortable." And
that's right.
She's like, "It's fine."
But yeah, he is just, and maybe it was CG. I don't know. It could have been, but his eye. He just did a really good job of just staring off into space. And a lot of I've seen, I'd say most people that are playing the role of a blind person, you can tell that they just have that sense of what's in front of them,
right?
And that they're not really, but he looked very believable.
Yeah.
that he could not see, and he might be the best blind. That might be the best acting of a blind person that I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not. I can't. I know I've seen. Obviously, there's the Netflix Daredevil, and I don't ever remember having a problem with his performance. Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, but I'll have to pay attention when I start. I haven't, unfortunately, gotten a chance to start season 2 yet, so I'm going to try to do that tonight. But I'm going to be on the lookout, see if I see any.
And I'll start season 1.
Fakeness. You should. It's really good. Season 1 was great. I'm hoping.
I've heard amazing things about it. So
yeah,
amazing might be pushing it a little bit.
It's
but
really
I've heard
good.
Really good
it's
things
really
about it.
Good.
Yeah.
Here's a random tidbit for you. The writer-director of this movie, Mark Steven Johnson, is the writer of Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, the first of those is a great, great movie.
That's funny because I actually grew up watching the second one more often.
What?
So I know the second one really well, and I don't know the first one that well. And
I don't
thought
like
the second one was really funny.
I didn't like the second one, but that's because I watched the first one.
Sure.
A lot.
That's how it always is.
I actually saw the first one in the theater.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would say you're a Mark Steven Johnson fan. No.
For that one.
He also he wrote and directed Ghost Rider, which we will eventually do.
And that's I have not seen Ghost Rider.
It's on par with this film, I think.
That was my feeling, and that was kind of what I've heard.
I don't
Green
hate
Lantern,
this movie. There are actual parts of this film that I enjoy. Like, I actually don't mind that scene of him fighting the biker guys. I think that's actually one of the cooler fight scenes in the movie. Mm-hmm. It kind of has the flashing. There's a couple of moments in it that are cringeworthy, like when he there's one shot, it's so weird, where like it shows Ben Affleck kind of turn and look, and you see like the radar bullets flying by his head. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, if you're just going to stand there, you're probably going to get shot. Like, I don't understand like why that shot needs to be in the scene. It was just strange to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool moment, but it always makes me laugh because I feel like the fan would never be able to hold him. But when he uses his, I don't know what you would call him, his stick, things that have
baton.
Baton, but it also is connected with like a wire. So he throws the
Right.
baton, and it like gets caught in the fan, and it pulls him up onto the fan, and he like kind of spins around on the fan for a second. I always think that's cool, even though the fan would never be able to hold its weight.
No, I agree. That was a good scene. That was really well done. And I was kind of excited watching the movie up to that point, and I was like, this might actually be kind of cool. I think the movie took a dive when Bullseye came into the picture.
It really, I mean, I know Bullseye is such a huge Daredevil, and I don't know if it's his like arch nemesis, but he's such a big Daredevil villain. I understand why Mark Steven Johnson probably wanted to put him in the film, but I do feel like Daredevil works better when it is more kind of grounded in reality, and he's fighting kind of like regular criminals. Like the Kingpin can be like a mob boss, and he's got different people out there that Daredevil has to kind of take down and stuff. And when you bring in somebody who's just so goofy, like Colin Farrell's version of Bullseye, it just takes the movie to a different level. Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of the things that hurt this movie is I think Mark Steven Johnson tried really hard to get comic book shots in his film that don't necessarily work. Like the opening scene in the movie when it kind of zooms in through the city and you see him holding on to the cross of the cathedral. And the blood's kind of running down the film. Or the blood's running down the front of the church. That doesn't really work for me all that well. Every time we kind of did like when you saw the flaming D in Ben Urich's glasses, things like that. It's just, I feel like there's like effects shots in there that are completely not needed.
Right.
And that kind of just bring the movie down a little bit for me.
Right.
That was another thing. I like how Daredevil took the time to put two perfect Ds on the subway floor after letting that guy get killed by the train.
I think though that was kind of his trademark in the comic book.
Was it?
I think so. I could be wrong, but
we'll go with that. I'm okay with it then.
Speaking of the comics, do you remember anything? I know you didn't read the origin story stuff or anything, but I don't think that most people that are blind get the extent of senses that Matt Murdock got.
No.
So how was that explained?
It's because the chemicals that blinded him were like supposed to be radioactive or something. I think
that's what it was.
Yeah. Okay. Back then, especially when these characters were created, I feel like everything was radioactive. Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider. Bruce Banner got exposed to radioactive gamma rays.
Right.
It was always radioactive. So I'm pretty sure it was like radioactive chemicals that blinded Matt Murdock, and then that's what gave him super senses.
Come on, Stan Lee. You created all these characters. You can do better than that.
The origin story in this film is okay. His dad was a boxer. I don't think he was called... they call him Jack the Devil or something like that in this movie, don't they? Jack the Devil Murdoch? Something like that.
I don't recall that, but...
In the comics, he was battling Jack Murdoch, I believe. I don't mind that they gave him the name the Devil, because it kind of makes sense that then he, Matt Murdock would then call himself Daredevil, kind of as an homage to his dad. So I kind of like that aspect of it, of the movie.
Speaking of his dad, I had to rewind. I had to watch this movie in segments.
Right.
And I kind of had to backtrack when I'd go for, and rewatch. And the first time I watched the dad scene where he was boxing and does not take the fall.
Right.
I think it had a little bit of a cheese feeling to me.
Uh-huh.
But when I watched it the second time, I really liked it. And I felt like it was, it was very touching to see his dad look up when he was on the ground.
Yeah. To
see Matt cheering for him, and he gets up and just throws that punch.
Yeah.
And I really liked the scene the second time I watched it. I also thought that his dad, who plays his dad?
His name is David Keith, I think.
His chin
Yeah.
is so chiseled, it looks fake. He almost looks like inspiration for a Dick Tracy villain.
Nice. He'd be Chins or something.
Right.
David Keith, yeah, that's his name. Yeah, I don't mind any of the boxing stuff, and I even kind of like where it's a little cheesy when he goes to show his dad the report card, and finds out that his dad's like a mob enforcer, and he's like, "Dad," and he runs away, and that's how. And then he gets into the accident. That scene, I like how he finds out, and actually they expand on it in the director's cut. In the theatrical version, if I remember correctly, he like goes looking for his dad and can't find him, and then stumbles upon him in the alley, and then he drops his report card. In the director's cut, he goes asking for his dad, and somebody's like, "Your dad hasn't worked here for months," and he like gets frustrated and throws his report card down. You see he's gotten straight A's, and then he sees his dad in the alley. Mm-hmm. So actually, I think the director's cut is a little bit better than that. It doesn't make it quite as cheesy.
Right.
But
the
then
director's cut is rated R.
It is rated R. It has some of the music has a little language in it, and then there's a scene with Colin Farrell,
right,
where he says the F word. And then other than that, I think that's really the only reason it's rated R. I can't think of anything else that's really. They've put 30 minutes back into the film. The theatrical cut is 1 hour and 43 minutes, and the director's cut is 2 hours and 13 minutes. And it doesn't really add anything to the movie, and I totally understand why they cut it out, because it doesn't really push the main story along. But they cut out this whole sequence and put it back in for the director's cut of Coolio being on trial. And I like that being in the movie, because I do like seeing, other than the very first scene where Jose Quesada is on trial, you don't see Matt Murdock in the courtroom ever again. And so I like that they have that whole him trying to figure out this murder trial, as well as being the vigilante at night. He's like doing both things. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it gives Matt Murdock another scene, which I'm all for.
Right, exactly.
I don't want too much. Like, you got to find that right balance, and I feel like this movie did have that of superhero and real identity.
Yeah, I think the other huge improvement from the director's cut versus the theatrical version is at the end of the rooftop scene. You remember when he's like, it's about to rain, and then he can see her,
right?
In the theatrical version, he said he hears a crime in process, and he's like, I have to go. And she goes, no, stay. And then he stays, and then it cuts to like a sex scene. It's PG-13 sex scene, but you see he like spends the night with her. Mm-hmm. And then there's no mention of this crime that he just turned his back on. And so I like in the theatrical version, he says, I gotta go, and he actually does leave. And then you see him, beating up the bad guy. That's when the part of him beating up the bad guy is still in the theatrical version, but I think it comes at a different point. Because it's the scene where he tells the kid, I'm not the bad guy. And so I really like in the theatrical version that he actually does leave to go fight crime and doesn't stay, and then is like, somebody probably died, but who cares?
He's a responsible superhero.
Right, exactly. He's putting his city first.
Yeah.
So I like that. That was cool.
I liked the rain stuff too. I bet that was in the comics, because it just seems like such a interesting concept that he can hear where the rain is hitting. Yeah. So it gives him a visualization of what's in front of him.
He probably loves it when it rains.
Yeah,
he can actually kind of see everything.
He uses that to his advantage at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Very
with
true.
Kingpin.
I would have to agree with you. I don't remember it in any of the comics I read, but I'm sure it probably has a comic origin.
That'd be good art too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember I used to wonder if Daredevil's blind, why does he put eye slots on his mask? But then I realized you'd be kind of easy to figure out who you are at that point.
Well, that's, it's interesting that you say that because, and I think this suit originated in the Frank Miller comics, not the red suit, the one I'm about to talk about, but the one in the first season of Daredevil on Netflix. It's basically just a black, like, spandex kind of suit, or maybe it's more tactical than that, but he's wearing like a black suit, and he has like a bandana type thing that comes all the way down over his eyes.
Yeah.
And so it's like it actually is kind of cool. It looks really cool, and I wonder if Charlie Cox, how well he could see through that, because he's got to do a lot of fight scenes wearing that costume. And so it looks really cool, and he's like, I don't need my eyes, and so he puts it down. And I'm almost positive that comic or that costume originated in Frank Miller's storylines. It also makes an appearance in an old made-for-TV Incredible Hulk movie where Matt Murdock and Daredevil were like a guest star, and I can't remember. I think it was the trial of the Incredible Hulk, and that's what Daredevil wore in that movie. He didn't have a red suit.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty intimidating when you're going up against someone that doesn't have eye slots.
Right.
It's pretty freaky.
And at first you're probably like, oh, this guy's blind. I can, take him, and then he overtakes you.
Right.
This guy can't see nothing. His bandana's over his eyes. That's how the bad guys talk.
They do that in the Netflix.
They do.
For a little bit. That's pretty much cool. I didn't know
the whole first season.
I did know that, now that you mention it. That's right. I think that's what brought that question in my mind, was the fact that he transitioned from that
to having eye holes.
Yeah.
And
I'm like, well, why did he do that? Yeah. But at the same time, I do think it would, it kind of narrows down really narrows down his identity.
Yeah.
Especially if he's going after people that he's had in his courtroom.
Right. Which I feel like is probably not that smart, because people could probably figure it out,
Yeah.
There's a lot of Easter eggs, I guess you could say, for people's names in this movie that are Marvel references. Jose Quesada is Joe Quesada, who used to be the VP or whatever of something for Marvel. He used to be like the head guy for Marvel. I remember in the boxing scene, Jack Murdock is fighting somebody named Romita, which would be like John Romita and John Romita Jr., who are artists who did a lot for Marvel and stuff like that. And I think even later on, at one point, Mark Margolis, the actor in the beginning who's talking to Jack Murdock, says something about, he names off some names, and he says Bendis, who would be Brian Michael Bendis, who was obviously a writer for Marvel and stuff like that. There's almost too many of them, in my opinion. It's a little distracting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know he's doing it to be like, pointing out all the people who have a hand in Marvel and who made Daredevil cool, but it kind of takes me out of the movie a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I was kind of shocked. I didn't remember that Elektra died.
Yeah.
Well, at least... Do you think it alludes... Do you think the necklace at the end is alluding that she is still alive?
Yeah. And I know that's a story arc from the comics, because that scene where Bullseye stabs her and it comes out through the back, it like kind of pulls on her like vest.
Uh-huh.
That image is practically straight out of the comics.
Gotcha. Was that in the original?
Yes.
Okay. Seemed a little graphic.
It does, yeah.
Even though you can't see anything, but your imagination does it for you.
Sure, yeah. That's the only thing I know from the comics is that image, but so I don't know exactly her whole story. Like I said, I don't know much about Elektra, so I don't know if she, resurrected or whatever, if she didn't really die type of thing. I don't know. But, yeah, that's what it's alluding to at the end. And obviously there was an Elektra movie I don't know if that takes place after this or not. Never saw it.
I never watched that movie. My daughter got me my copy of Daredevil either last Christmas or the Christmas before, and it's a 4-movie pack. It came with Daredevil, Elektra, and the 2 Fantastic Four movies.
Nice.
The original ones. Well, the ones that, you know what I'm talking about. 2005. And Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Right.
And after watching this movie, I realized why they did that.
Because they're all Fox?
That is one, but the main reason is they realized no one was going to buy the movies alone.
Except me.
Right. So they're like, well, maybe, if they can if they like one of these movies, then they'll buy all 4 of them.
Did your Daredevil did you have the option to watch the theatrical version or the director's cut, or was it just the director's cut?
No, it's just director's.
Yeah. That's how the Blu-ray is. You can only get the director's cut on Blu-ray.
It's weird. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
They must have come to the conclusion that they're like, you know what? If people are going to watch this, let it be the director's cut. Maybe they'll like it. Maybe there's a slight chance they'll like it, other than the theatrical. Yeah, I haven't seen Elektra. I've seen the other 3.
Elektra's on our list. I don't know when we'll get to it, but it's on our list of movies to do.
Even though I haven't seen Elektra, the only one out of those, and I'm assuming I'm not going to, I liked the original Fantastic Four for what it was.
Yeah.
So out of this group,
Yeah, I can't speak, obviously I haven't seen Elektra either, but I can tell you when it came out, it looked terrible, and so that's why I didn't go see it.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if I like it either.
Yeah. Speaking of Elektra, when she's trained, after she thinks that Daredevil killed her father, she's doing the whole training sequence stuff, which was so good.
So good.
And there's the last shot is it's a close up of one of the punching bags, and it has this terrible drawing of like a devil face.
Yeah, it almost looks like Wilson from Castaway.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's a great description. And I was like, the only way this could have been cheesier is if they had actually taken one of the promo shoot images of Ben Affleck standing like on top of a building, and she had like taped that to the bag.
Like, how did you get that picture? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was pretty bad. I also don't really understand, and maybe that's a real training, maybe that's a real thing, but her fighting like sandbags falling from the ceiling, I didn't really understand that whole method of training either. I was like, what is happening here? Well, real quick, I kind of, want to bring up one other cast member that we haven't talked about, and that's Jon Favreau as Foggy Nelson.
Yeah, I actually did not know he was in this movie.
Oh, really?
So when I saw his name pop up, I was like, what?
I wonder if Jon Favreau saw this film and was like, I can do this better, and then directed Iron Man.
That's like, pretty much...
I'm going to do this better.
That's pretty much what Iron Man was, because, Iron Man is... We were talking earlier, Daredevil is Marvel's Batman.
Yeah.
In a way.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. How you, like, tone-wise.
Right. Tone, visually.
Mm-hmm.
And Iron Man is also... financially and, technology-wise.
Right.
Which those kind of correlate together because the technology comes from the finances.
Right.
And all 3 of them are human.
Yeah, that's true.
They're all superhero made by their, well, I was going to say technology, but not Daredevil. He's just abilities, but it's like, it's not superhuman.
Right.
But
like
he's
got powers, I guess you could say.
Right.
But it's not, it doesn't really, I guess it does give him an advantage over a regular person because he can like hear heartbeats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat, I wouldn't say he has like much of an advantage over
Daredevil's powers are explained as natural.
Right.
Well, I don't know, because we were talking about the chemical.
The radioactive chemicals.
Yeah. Because, see, I don't know. That's why I asked you earlier. I don't even know if that's part of the reason, because the research I did, it pretty much just said he's human. So, I don't know. Like, it didn't...
that's... I think we're on the same page. I understand what you're saying. He does have powers, technically, but it's not the same type of thing like Captain America's got. He doesn't have, like, more... he's not stronger than everybody else, and he's not, faster.
Right.
Or...
Well, also, people that, have these disabilities, it's actually true that their other senses
are heightened.
Are enhanced.
Bit, yeah.
Not
quite
to
as
Daredevil's
much as Daredevil's. Right. But
so
I've heard that
that's
too.
where the question comes.
Yeah. But going back to Jon Favreau, I liked his performance as Foggy. I thought he's, he brings a little bit of the comedy to it. I like their rapport, I guess, Ben Affleck and Jon Favreau when they're in the coffee shop and stuff.
Yeah.
So he does. I thought he did a pretty good job with it. And he's, when I saw him as Foggy, I thought he was a perfect choice. He's got the right look for Foggy Nelson, I think.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion. Other people out there might have thought he was terrible. Terrible choice for Foggy. I don't know.
No, you're right. You're right, Justin.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Indisputable.
All right, well, I think that's pretty much all I have to say on the film. I can't really think of anything else.
Yeah, me too.
Well, let's get into our rating. You want to go first?
You go first.
All right. Like I said, I enjoyed this movie when it first came out. Now that, time has passed, I can still sit down and watch it from time to time. I would say years have to kind of go by. Like, I don't really see myself sitting down and rewatching it again anytime soon. But I didn't hate, I wasn't like, come on, just finish watching it this time around. So, there's parts of it I enjoy. It's kind of a guilty pleasure, I would say. But as a film, I have to take off points for certain things that we talked about. So I think my grade would be, I'm going to go with a C-.
Okay. Like I said, starting out, I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised. I was like, this might actually be not
pretty good,
but
maybe
decent.
semi-entertaining. Yeah.
And then it just stopped.
Yeah.
And just kept rolling downhill.
Yeah.
I was going to give it 2 stars. I almost want to give it 1.
Okay.
Just because I was like, well, I want to give it 2 because, I liked the costume design.
Right.
And then there was a long pause. And I realized I didn't have anything else. So,
all right. Fair enough.
I think I have to give this movie 1 star out of 5.
Well, according to Netflix, that means you hated it.
I'm not going to argue with that.
All right. You hated it. That's fine.
I mean, there were a couple good things, but, we talked about what those were. They just weren't strong enough to bring it up to 2 stars.
Okay.
I tried hard to find a way to bring it up to 2 because, especially since this was right, the infancy of superhero movies.
Right.
So I was trying to give it a little bit of a break, but
it's
just a bad movie.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. Like, I know it's a bad movie, but I can still kind of somewhat enjoy it. So that's cool. 1 star. You should watch. Now you got to watch the Netflix show to cleanse your palate and get what a a good Daredevil.
Yeah, I mean, Daredevil's a cool character.
Yeah.
So I will definitely do that.
Cool. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Daredevil. You should let us know. You can visit our website, www.cinemaheroes.com. Or you can go to our Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. Or you can throw us a line on Twitter, @CinemaHeroes. I think that wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. I'm not entirely sure Stan Lee created Daredevil, but whatever.
I thought he did. He has a cameo in the movie.
Yeah, but he's got a cameo in every movie.
The ones that he created?
Well, he's in Captain America. He didn't create Captain America.
I thought he created Daredevil.
I'm looking right now. Created by Stan Lee and Bill Everett. Okay, you're right. Yes! You're absolutely right. Yes! He did create Daredevil.
Okay.
Which makes sense. He always did the illiterate names too. Matt Murdock, Bruce Banner.
Right.
Except for Tony Stark, for some reason.
Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Bruce Banner.
I said that, but that's fine.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry. Bruce Banner.
Yeah, Bruce Banner.